It was May 29th, 1925. A British colonel named Percy Fawcett sat down in a jungle clearing somewhere in the heart of Brazil and wrote what would be his final letter. He handed it to a native runner, watched the man disappear into the green wall of trees, and then walked deeper into the Amazon. He was never seen again. Fawcett wasn't lost. He knew exactly where he was going. He was searching for a city, a great forgotten civilization buried beneath the jungle canopy, a place he called simply City Z. The scientific establishment mocked him. Explorers called him obsessed. The jungle swallowed him whole, and for nearly a century, everyone assumed he had died chasing a myth. Then, in January 2024, a team of archaeologists pointed a laser at the Ecuadorian Amazon, and the jungle gave up its secret. What they found beneath those trees rewrote everything we thought we knew about human civilization. For 500 years, the story told about the Amazon was this: the jungle was too hostile, too wet, too nutrient-poor to sustain large human settlements. The indigenous peoples who lived there were small, scattered nomadic bands, subsisting, surviving, never thriving. When the first Spanish conquistadors pushed into the rainforest in the 1540s, they came back with wild stories, stories of roads, of cities glittering with gold, of a king who covered himself in gold dust every morning and washed it off into a sacred lake at sunset. They called him El Dorado, the Golden One. Francisco de Orellana sailed the entire length of the Amazon River in 1542 and wrote of dense continuous settlements stretching for miles along both banks. He described roads wide enough for 20 men to walk side by side. He described temples. He described hundreds of thousands of people. His contemporaries thought he was lying, or hallucinating, or both. When later explorers arrived, they found nothing. No cities, no roads, no gold. Just impenetrable jungle and scattered villages of a few hundred people at most. The obvious conclusion? Orellana had invented the whole thing. That conclusion stood for 450 years. It was completely wrong. Here is what nobody understood until recently. The Amazon is not an empty wilderness. It is a graveyard of civilizations so thoroughly erased that we didn't even know we were standing on top of them. The problem was disease. When European contact began in the 16th century, the catastrophe that followed was almost beyond comprehension. Smallpox, measles, typhus. Indigenous populations along the Amazon had zero immunity to European pathogens. Mortality rates in some regions reached 90% within a single generation. Entire nations, not just villages, but nations, ceased to exist. The jungle moved in. Within decades, it had swallowed the roads, the plazas, the earthen walls. The forest erased the evidence so completely that later Europeans decided those civilizations had never existed at all. They called the Amazon pristine wilderness. They were looking at a ruin, and that brings us back to Percy Fawcett. He wasn't the only one who believed. Between the 1850s and the 1920s, dozens of explorers pushed into the Amazon, searching for the lost civilization they were certain was there. A Portuguese manuscript from the 1700s had described a stone city with towering arches, a great central column, and inscriptions no one could read. That manuscript drove Fawcett to obsession. He made 7 expeditions into the Amazon between 1906 and 1924. He survived anacondas, piranhas, electric eels, hostile encounters, raging fever, and his own men deserting him in the dark. On his 8th expedition in 1925, he brought his 21-year-old son, Jack. Neither of them came back. Over a dozen rescue expeditions were launched to find them. Several of those searchers also disappeared. No confirmed trace of Fawcett or his son was ever recovered. To this day, what happened to them in that jungle remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. But here is what makes this story truly extraordinary. Stay with me, because the answer to Fawcett's question, his life's question, the question he died for, was found less than 100 years after he vanished. The technology that changed everything is called lidar, light detection and ranging. You mount it to an aircraft, fly over the jungle, and it fires millions of laser pulses per second toward the ground. The pulses pierce the canopy, bounce off the soil, and return to a sensor. The result is a map of the ground surface, as if the jungle does not exist. As if someone has simply dissolved every tree, every vine, every 500 years of growth, and revealed the bare earth beneath. In January 2024, archaeologists from France, Germany, Ecuador, and the United States published the results of a lidar survey of Ecuador's Upano Valley in the foothills of the Andes, at the edge of the Amazon basin. The results appeared in the journal Science, and they were, by any measure, staggering. Beneath the jungle, the lasers revealed more than 6,000 individual structures. Earthen platforms, raised plazas, ceremonial mounds, all arranged in a precise geometric grid, as deliberate as any city plan drawn on paper. Connecting them, a network of perfectly straight roads, some running for dozens of kilometers, without a single deviation, cut at precise right angles. The entire complex covered more than 300 square kilometers, an area larger than the city of Barcelona. And it was not one city. It was a network of cities, urban centers connected to satellite towns, connected to agricultural zones, connected to ceremonial sites, all functioning as a single, integrated civilization. A civilization that had been building here for 2,500 years. A civilization that, at its peak, may have housed 30,000 people, as many as lived in Roman-era London, then the largest city in Britain. A civilization that vanished so completely, so silently, that no one knew it had existed until a laser touched the earth, 98 years after Percy Fawcett walked into the trees looking for exactly this. But the Upano Valley was not alone. In Brazil's Mato Grosso region, archaeologist Michael Heckenberger and his colleagues had already mapped the Cuhicugu complex, a network of interconnected communities along the upper Xingu River, each surrounded by defensive ditches, each connected to its neighbors by roads precisely 20 meters wide. A civilization that had thrived for at least 15 centuries, 1,500 years. Gone, forgotten, hidden under the canopy. In Bolivia's Llanos de Mojos, lidar revealed hundreds of forest islands, raised agricultural fields, and vast causeways, built by an ancient culture to manage the seasonal flooding of the savanna, an engineering feat so vast it had transformed an entire wetland into one of the most productive landscapes on Earth. Built by people, history had decided did not exist. And then there is the soil. Scattered across the Amazon in patches that sometimes cover hundreds of hectares, researchers have found a strange dark earth called terra preta, literally black earth in Portuguese. Normal Amazon soil is red-orange, acidic, desperately nutrient-poor. Terra preta is jet black, dense with charcoal, bone fragments, ceramic shards, the accumulated waste of centuries of human habitation. It is, in essence, an ancient city written in soil. And terra preta has been found across the Amazon in hundreds of locations. Many of them never studied, never excavated, never visited by a single archaeologist. The scale of what those soil patches imply is almost too large to hold in the mind. Before European contact, the Amazon was not home to scattered nomadic bands of a few thousand people. Some researchers now estimate it supported millions of people. Cities, kingdoms, and road networks spanning thousands of kilometers. A civilization, or perhaps many overlapping civilizations, as complex and as grand as anything the ancient Mediterranean produced. All of it erased, all of it waiting to be found. If this is the kind of history that stops you cold, the stories that didn't make it into any textbook, that is exactly what this channel exists for. We find the buried ones every week. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, right now is the moment. Hit the button. There is so much more where this came from. So why does it matter? Why does it matter that cities existed in the Amazon 2,000 years ago if they are gone now? Because they are not entirely gone. And because the story of how they disappeared has everything to do with the world we live in today. Right now, the Amazon is being cleared at a rate of roughly 10,000 square kilometers every year. Every time a section of forest falls to a chainsaw or a fire, something beneath the soil disappears forever. Archaeologists estimate that for every site found with lidar, there may be dozens, perhaps hundreds, already destroyed, burned, bulldozed, planted over with soy fields and cattle pasture. A 1,000-year-old ceremonial plaza reduced to a cattle trail. But the ancient Amazonians left behind something that may matter even more than the architecture. That terra preta. Scientists studying it have discovered that it was not an accident. The ancient inhabitants of the Amazon deliberately engineered their soil, mixing charcoal, bone, organic waste, and ceramic shards in precise proportions to create a growing medium of extraordinary, almost supernatural fertility. Normal Amazon soil exhausts itself within 2 or 3 growing seasons. Terra preta has remained fertile for more than 2,000 years without amendment. In some tested plots, crops grown in terra preta yield 6 times more than crops grown in adjacent natural soil. 6 times, without a single gram of synthetic fertilizer. If scientists could fully decode the ancient formula, and several teams around the world are actively trying, it could transform agriculture across the tropics, feed hundreds of millions of people, lock vast amounts of carbon in the soil rather than releasing it into the atmosphere. The lost cities of the Amazon did not just leave us mysteries, they left us solutions. Solutions to problems we haven't managed to solve yet. And then there are the people. The living descendants of those ancient Amazonians, the Cuicuro, the Kayapo, the dozens of indigenous nations still holding ground in the Amazon today, have been saying for centuries that their ancestors built something great here. Colonial governments told them they were wrong. Anthropologists told them they were misremembering. The standard history told them their ancestors were primitive forest wanderers who left no mark. The lidar surveys have proven, beyond argument, what indigenous oral tradition preserved through 500 years of erasure. That is not a small thing. That is an act of historic reckoning. So what happened to Percy Fawcett? We still don't know. The jungle kept that secret. Several theories exist: that he and Jack were killed in a hostile encounter, that they died of disease and exhaustion, that Fawcett survived for years among an indigenous community before the forest finally took him. Expeditions have claimed to find his bones, his compass, his diaries. None of it has been definitively confirmed. The question officially remains open. What we know is this: Percy Fawcett was not crazy. He was not deluded. He was a man who walked into a jungle and looked at it with different eyes than every scientist of his era. Eyes that said, something was here. Something great. And it did not simply disappear. The laser proved he was right. The cities he was searching for were there, are there, thousands of them, sleeping beneath the canopy, waiting for the next lidar flight to wake them up. Researchers estimate that less than 5% of the Amazon basin has been systematically surveyed with this technology. Less than 5%. What lies beneath the other 95? What roads, what plazas, what cities, what entire civilizations? We cannot even begin to imagine. Imagine standing at the edge of that dark green horizon, knowing that beneath those trees, beneath 1,000 years of roots and soil and silence, something enormous is waiting to be found. Something that changes the story of what humanity built. Something that changes the story of what humanity lost. The Amazon has kept its secrets for 500 years. It is only now beginning to speak. And what it is saying, what those 6,000 platforms, those arrow-straight roads, those centuries of black earth and ceramic shards are saying, is that the greatest lost civilization on earth was never truly lost. It was simply waiting for us to learn how to look. If this changed how you see the ancient world, there is a video on this channel about a lost kingdom buried under the Sahara Desert that will do exactly the same thing. It is right there on your screen when this ends. And if you want to keep going, subscribe. Every week we find the history they decided you didn't need to know. We'll see you in the next one.